In this meditation or guided contemplation, I invite you to an exercise of imagination, to travel back to the late 16th century to a small rural region, specifically a tower in the southwest of France. It's filled with ancient books and a ceiling covered with timeless maxims. It's the place where the French philosopher Michel de Montaigne spent most of his days. It's where Montaigne set out to discover himself and to write what we know today as his essays. He said of the project, "I myself am the subject of my book." He believed his essays were analogous to an artist producing a self-portrait. But unlike the artist in his studio who catches in pencil or paints a fixed likeness of himself, Montaigne discovered that he could never pin down a stable I, which he could study. His I, as the writer, was ever-changing. As you'll hear shortly, one of the many topics he explored was the solitary life. In an essay titled On Solitude, the inspiration for this contemplation, Montaigne calls us to bring our thoughts and reflections back to ourselves and our own well-being. Before we begin this guided contemplation, let us heed Montaigne's advice and prepare ourselves for a bit of stillness. I invite you to find somewhere comfortable. You can sit up straight if you like, or even lie down. You could embark on a gentle walk through nature or your neighborhood. Lastly, consider setting aside any concerns that might be on your mind or heart, at least for a few moments. Attempt to ground yourself right where you are. Let us leave aside those long comparisons between the solitary life and the active one. Let us make our happiness depend on ourselves. Let us loosen ourselves from the bonds that tie us to others. Let us gain power over ourselves to live really and truly alone, and doing so in contentment. The greatest thing in the world is to know how to live to oneself. Whoever can turn round the duties of love and fellowship and pour them into himself should do so. We have lived quite enough for others. Let us live at least this tail end of life for ourselves. Let us bring our thoughts and reflections back to ourselves and to our own well-being. We have a soul able to turn in on herself. She can keep herself company. Let us not fear that in such a solitude as that we shall be crouching in painful idleness. In lonely places, be a crowd unto yourself. You and one companion are audience enough for each other. So are you for yourself. For you, let the crowd be one, and one be a crowd. You should no longer be concerned with what the world says of you, but with what you say of yourself. Withdraw into yourself, but first prepare yourself. It would be madness to entrust yourself to yourself if you did not know how to govern yourself. There are ways of failing in solitude, as in society. Let us leave aside those long comparisons between the solitary life and the active one. Let us make our happiness depend on ourselves. Let us loosen ourselves from the bonds that tie us to others. Let us gain power over ourselves to live really and truly alone, and doing so in contentment. The greatest thing in the world is to know how to live to oneself.